Hi, I'm Christy Hicks. I'm here to tell my story, and this is where it all begins. 6.5 years ago, I woke up one morning, and my husband said, I don't feel so good. And I said, okay. And I got up, we had coffee. I always had coffee I had a coffee bar in our bedroom, so I didn't have to go downstairs to keep refilling the cups. And I felt strange that day. I had just a weird feeling, and I served his coffee as I did every morning, and I got my coffee and I got back in bed curled up, and I said, I feel like I just need to be comforted today. And he said, okay. So I just laid down on him, and he was sitting up in the bed, and I just laid over on him, and he held me for a little while, and then he said, okay, get up. I don't want to spill coffee in your ear. So I got up, and we were sitting there drinking our coffee, and we had an unusual conversation that I would just encourage every married person to have. Ask the Lord to let you have that. Not that, let's the wrong word, but ask the Lord to help you have that with your spouse. And basically, what it was, I'm so glad you were my husband. I'm so glad you were my wife. I'm so glad that you were the mother of our children. You were the father of our children. Thank you for all the years that we've had together. Thank you for all the times, and even down to if I've ever embarrassed you, if I've ever hurt your feelings, which I know I hurt his feelings, and he knew he hurt mine many times over the 31 years that we were married. And it was just such a beautiful moment together. And we sat there and we talked and drank our coffee. And he said, I just don't feel good. I can't seem to catch my breath. And I said, okay. I said, we had an adult daughter who was handicapable, and she had to be helped to get ready for to go to her daycare. And I said, I'll help her get ready. You go ahead and get yourself ready, because he would always go fix her breakfast and he'd fix her lunch, and so what I said, I'll go do that. And while you get ready, he got up and slowly, I'm in there fixing everybody's breakfast and lunch and stuff, and he hollers, Christy, come here. And I went to the stairs from the kitchen, and I said, what? And he said, I can't catch my breath. And I said, well, just sit down. And he sat down. I said, sit down right there at the stairs, and when you get it where you can catch your breath, come on down. And a little while, he came downstairs and he said, I need to sit down. And I said, okay. And he was not breathing right. He was breathing really fast. His heart was racing. And he said, I think you need to call an ambulance. And when he said that, I knew that this day was definitely not going to turn out the way I thought it would. I called the ambulance, and he went to the hospital We started our day at like 6 or 6:30 that morning. By 10:30, um, he was gone. Just gone. And I had already called my family that day and called our kids and said, hey, something's going on with your dad. The hardest thing that you ever want to have to do in life is to tell your children, your grown, married children, or any age really, that their dad has passed. That was probably my toughest day I had ever experienced, because how how do you tell them? And one of them, my second oldest, was she was on the phone when the doctor came out to talk to me, came out of the emergency room to talk to me. And he said, I've given him 5 shots to restart his, 4 shots to restart his heart. And there is a nurse on top of him doing CPR and has been doing CPR for quite a while. And he said, before I give him a 5th shot, I need to come ask you, what do you want to do? My daughter was on the phone with me, trying to talk, trying to figure out how can she get to me, how can she get to us. And I said, don't, just let him go. And she screamed, just screamed, no, keep him alive. Wait till I get there, wait till I get there. And the doctor said, that nurse can't keep doing CPR till you get here. I broke my daughter's heart that day. I broke all my children's heart that day. My heart was broken. My life was broken. I had to call our client and tell him, no, he called me. He said somebody was supposed to show up here about 8 o'clock, and he said it's 10 now and nobody's called or shown. I had to tell him, I said, well, you need to get another company to come out because my husband just passed. And I gave him the name of the company that comes out. My business died that day. Everything about my life was never the same. I lost everything that day. The one thing I did not lose was trusting God. You see, 31 years prior to that, I found myself pregnant, not married, and I moved to Texas so I wouldn't have to tell my daddy that I was pregnant and not married. I broke his heart when I did. Broke our relationship when I did. I don't know if you can tell, but I have a southern accent because I'm a southern woman. And I was living with my sister at the time when I moved to Texas. I was living with my sister, and we didn't really get along, but really well. It was just she was having babies, and I was having babies, and pregnant women, and in a house. That's a challenge. That's a challenge in itself. But I had seen an ad in the newspaper, and it said, "Single father of two needs live-in nanny, one child permitted. Call this number." At first, I thought, yeah, right. Yeah, right. Who's going to do that? Who's going to really put an ad in the paper and be legitimate? And I talked to my sister, and she said, "Call them, see." So I called and never talked to him. And then one Sunday, I got up. One Sunday morning, I got up and I had rededicated my life to Christ back then. And I didn't go to church that day. I went back to bed and laid down. And when I got up, the phone rang. And on the other end was this man that had put an ad in the paper. And he said, I I want to have an interview with you today. He said, and if I choose, if I hire you, you have to be able to move in today and start tomorrow. I'm like, okay. That seems to be my saying, okay. And excuse me, I don't think there's a stream on, a pause on here. Oh well. Um, so I went for the interview that day, and he hired me. So I had to go back to my sister's, pack up the few things that I had, and I had to move into a house with a man I did not know and two young daughters. One had just turned 6, and the other was 8, about to turn 9, and she was handicapable. And I tell you, they were so cute. I just, I fell in love with them. Those cute faces, ooh, I'm telling you, they're hard to resist. But we made it work. I lived there with him. Let's see, that was like August of 1987. Yeah, August of 1987. My second daughter had just had her birthday prior to me moving in. And so she was spry and witty and bright and active and um, just, she was a joy. And the oldest one, and I call them my daughters because they're not my stepdaughters. I'm the only mother they know. And my oldest daughter, she was sitting there in a wheelchair and saying, "Daddy, Daddy, will you get me some more cereal? Can I have some more cereal?" And I'm thinking, get up and go get her some cereal. She could eat. But anyway, I moved in that night or that evening, and I had to learn how to cook food the way they liked it cooked. I had to um, do all kinds of things the way they liked it done, and I was scared. I was scared. I was so scared. But the house was had um, the two front bedrooms, which one was mine and one was the girls, and it had a bathroom, a Jack and Jill bathroom in it, and then in the back of the house was the master where their dad lived, and um, so I lived there for a while, and New Year's. Oh, and I ended up having a son early. He was a preemie, and felt very alone, very ashamed, and but determined because the only thing I think I ever wanted was, I mean, as far as I can remember from ten and up, was I wanted a boy. And maybe because my dad had all girls, and he he always wanted a boy. So instead of treating us like girls, he, he kind of treated us like boys, especially me, because I was the last one at home. So I just wanted a boy because I thought, well, if I had a boy, everybody, you my dad would just would I guess accept me. He would accept me and say, "Yeah, great, you're forgiven," or whatever. I don't know, just some kind of relationship issue would instantly be solved, and it wasn't. It wasn't. Took him a long time to forgive me. Um, and I just thought, well, maybe their dad, that maybe his dad would want me then, which I don't know so much about that as because I left. It wasn't his dad that I left. I left for a lot of reasons, and some of those reasons are still just a little too personal and raw to tell. So I I left. I was pregnant, 23. I had graduated from college twice. Um, no job, no car, no money, no home, no husband, and I honestly can say I didn't have a whole lot of hope. And I would just scream out. I remember just screaming out to God, saying, "You've got to do something. You've got to do something. You've got to do something." And the whole time he just loved on me. He just kept loving me through it every day, every day, every day. I was born again, saved, whatever you want to call it, but I didn't know him, and I didn't know relationship then. I didn't know anything. I was the most intelligent, stupidest person you ever met. Oh gosh, and thought I knew everything. I came out of college thinking, I know it all, and I'm going to conquer the world. I think the world conquered me. And anyway, so the day I went into labor with my son early, and my first husband was Eddie, and his he had developed feelings for me, and I guess I developed feelings for him. At Thanksgiving before, no, let's see. Sorry, my dates are getting a little mixed up. It's been a long time ago. But he and I developed feelings for each other. We ended up going out on our first date. It was January 1st, no, December 31st of 1987. We went on our first date, and he we dropped the kids off at his parents, and we're going to go get in the car, and he wouldn't let me out of the house till I kissed him. I felt strange doing that because I didn't kiss on the first date. I know that sounds strange, especially since I'd already had a baby. I'm not kissing you on a first date. But anyway, we ended up dating after that, and I moved in with him after that. He was at the hospital when my son was born, after my son was born, and just totally, that was daddy. That was daddy. And the girls always called me mother and always called me mom. They still do, thankfully. um, we dated and lived together as a family for a short time before I got pregnant again. I was like, oh no. And he asked me to marry him. And I never wanted to get married because I'd had some rough. I'd seen my dad go through like 5 or 6 marriages, but no, not six, four marriages that were really rough. He had been married 6 times in the end, but I didn't see anything good about marriage, and I thought I don't want anything to do with that. So let's don't do that. But when my first husband asked me to marry him, out of my innermost being, yes came out. And I was just like, what is going on? I don't want to get married. The next day I called my best friend from back home and said, he asked me to marry him. I said, yes. How do I get out of this? And I'm pregnant again. Yay. Um, we ended up getting married in July of 88. July 2nd, 88. And I had my last child, a baby girl, in February of 89. Sorry, numbers, you have to stop and think. So I had her. So by that time I was 24 or 25. No, I was 25. I was 25 and had just given birth to my last child, 25, and I had 4 children. I had 2 sets, because the older set and then babies. And the oldest one, and if she ever hears this, it's not to hurt her feelings or anybody else's feelings, but she was always like having 2 or 3 babies because you always had to do something for her, always. I had to feed her, had to bathe her, had to dress her, had to tie her shoes, had to do her hair, had to, oh my stars, we fought in the mornings. Oh, every morning was a fight because I had to put braces on her feet before I put shoes on. And she didn't like it. It hurt her, but that was what Scottish Rite said. You have to do this. You have to do this. Thankfully, over time, after her teenage years, she gave up and she's like, I'm not doing this anymore. It's good. So anyway, through all those years, Eddie and I had a good relationship if it was just the two of us. We would talk, we would laugh, we would kid around, things like that. But there was always that wedge between us. It was our kids. These are my kids, and I'm going to protect them from you because I wasn't that great of a mother. I'm going to be honest. I didn't know how. I was too young. I was too stupid to be as educated as I was. I was stupid, and I was very protective of of the babies. Very protective and probably overprotective. So it always caused a rift. But like I said, we had we had a good relationship, just the two of us. Um, he drank a lot. He drank a lot for many years. When he was 30, before he and I got married, before he and I met, he had had a heart attack on his 30th birthday. And so he's a heart patient. And everything had to do with, oh, my heart, my heart, my heart, my heart, my heart. Oh, my heart, my heart, my heart. And bless his heart, I just learned how to pray over his heart. I prayed over his heart. I prayed over his job. I prayed over this. I prayed over the kids. I prayed over everything. I would ask people to come and help me, and nobody would ever come give me any relief. He worked 2 or 3 jobs so that I could stay home with the kids. It was too expensive to get daycare, and all I would have been doing was been working somewhere for just to pay for daycare back then. You didn't have the government programs that you do now that pay for it. Um, so we had a rocky relationship it, for most of our marriage as a whole. I don't know if this is making sense, but when it was just the two of us and when he was sober, it was good. I don't know if this is going to help anybody, but I'm going to tell you something. If you drink or you do drugs and you do them every day consistently or every evening consistently, and you're fussing and fighting with your spouse or with your significant other or your family or whatever, and you get up the next day and you consistently apologize, after a while your apology doesn't mean anything because they're just empty words until the evening. And, they're just words. And it causes problems. I've never seen people drinking or doing drugs or anything outside of a good relationship. That drinking or drugs that really brought a husband and wife together or a family together because you know it's too much chaos. But Eddie was a heart patient, and I remember uh, we'd been married for like 15 years, maybe 10 years. We'd been married for 10 years, and he came home from the grocery store, My second daughter was about 15 years old. He came home. He always did the grocery shopping because he always handled the money. And I was never permitted to grocery shop, or I didn't handle any money. I just, if I wanted something, I'd have to go to him and say, I, I need this amount of money because I need this, this, and other. And then a lot of times it was a fight because we didn't have a lot of money, but it was a fight because we had money for beer and cigarettes, but we didn't have money for the kids' clothes or for anything extra or whatever they needed. We just didn't have it. I'd go to church and I'd come home from church and there'd be money in my pockets. Sometimes I'd go to church and there was food in my car when I came out of church. One time I went to, maybe twice, I went to church, and when I opened the trunk of the car to put my daughter's wheelchair in there, it was a 45-pound wheelchair and I weighed 112. Um, I put a wheelchair, was going to put a wheelchair, and my trunk was full of clothes for the kids. God provides. But anyway, Eddie had a heart attack when my second daughter was about 15, and he drove himself. He drove both of us to the hospital. He was smoking a cigarette. He said, "I'm gonna smoke a cigarette right now." I said, "Cause, and I'm gonna enjoy it because it's the last one I'm ever gonna have." It was in the winter. I don't remember the year, but on the way to the hospital, he saw a friend that was walking. He's like, "Oh, I'm gonna stop here. I'm gonna pick him up, take him wherever, and then we'll go." And that's what we did. Um, Eddie was not a person that you could tell him no. I don't think I ever told him no. Um, just he'd come up with an idea, and that's what we did. And I was like, "Okay, okay, okay." Sometimes it's easier to say yes than it is to fight, and well, and to fight and lose because I would have lost. So we took the guy to his house, and then we drove to the hospital, and he had a heart attack. He was he was having in the process of having a heart attack, and so I gave him some medicine. I ended up calling my dad, and our relationship had gotten better, and he adored our children. He really did. My dad thought our children were the greatest thing. Um, and he came over. My dad kept a backpack. My dad he was a good he was a good dad. He was a hard dad, but he was a good dad. He kept a bag packed so that when any of us called, Daddy, can you come help? Daddy, this has happened. Can you come? Daddy, I'm having a baby. Can you come? My dad was at my dad was there when I had babies. If he wasn't there when I had babies, he was on his way, and I knew he would handle things for me. So my dad came and took care of my kids because I lived with my dad. All of us. Well, we lived with my dad raised us, and I had three sisters, uh, and lots of stepsisters and stepbrothers and stuff. They don't. It's too many to count. So when my dad came, took care of everything, and the doctor told Eddie, "You need to go home. You need to rest. You can't drive. Can't do any of these things." And they sent us home. As soon as I got us in the driveway, he hopped in the truck, went on to work. It's like, I can't tell you not to do it. I could. I told him, you don't need to be doing this. And he's like, we've got to make some money. Anyway, he was a heart patient from the age 30. I'm sorry, I can't tell the ages and the years of when he ended up having 4 heart attacks. And the last day that he was alive, he didn't have a heart attack. It's just that he was down to about 25% of his heart functioning. And it was just overworked and it quit. Wow, I hadn't really thought about some of these things in a long time. So there were many times when he would, a couple of times when he'd have a heart attack and we'd have to drive to Plano because they had Baylor Heart Hospital there. That's where his heart doctor was. Or I would go with him to, he'd have all kinds of heart procedures and stuff. The latest and the greatest we would always go have. He had, uh, let's see, what are those things called? Heart caths. Yeah, but they do a heart cath. I got a picture of his actual heart. I have a digital picture. I don't know where, but then who knows where. I have a real photo of his heart with the cath in there where they were putting stents in. That's the word I'm trying to think of. He had 4 stents, and he'd had in all 4 of his um, what are those things called? Where the blood flows through, the arteries and veins that your blood goes through. He'd had heart ablations. Then what that does was it would open your, basically it would go in there and burn out the scar tissue so the blood could flow through. He had that done. He had a pacemaker with a defib. Before he had that done, he did have to ask the doctor, can, if I had that done, can she make it go off? Because she gets pretty mad. And I'm like, yeah, he makes me pretty mad sometimes. You can't do it. You can't. But it's amazing. They can turn your heart on and off and up and down with those things. It's pretty wild. But even those couldn't heal it, couldn't keep him going. Because when you've overworked your body and your heart, you're done. Let's go to the day that he passed. My sister that I had lived with here in Texas, she and her husband drove over to the hospital to come get me. My son made arrangements so he could come up. I called my mother and my other sister, and they drove in from Florida. And then my number 2 sister, she had brain cancer and couldn't travel. She had cancer all in her body and couldn't travel, and it went to her brain. And she died like 8 months after Eddie died. That was kind of hard. I don't know that it was really hard for me. I think because I was so numb and my life was in just autopilot for so long. I'm like, oh, it was just really hard. Oh, I'm gonna take a break now. I'll be back.